most senior professionals are making a communication mistake that costs them credibility with executives and delays promotions by years. As a senior professional, I've learned the hard way that communicating with executives isn't about more detail, it's about being more persuasive. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to communicate so executives see you as promotion ready, why storytelling works in business and exactly how to do it, and how to cut the technical detail without losing any of the meaning. To start, let me show you the mistake that even smart professionals make that make them lose credibility with senior leaders. So when communicating with executives, most professionals take all the work that they've done, all the data that they've gathered, and then try and find a way to explain it all, because they want to show the depth of their thinking. So the executive will recognize their value and trust their judgment. But this has a big problem because executives don't reward detail, they reward outcomes. And so the second you share too much detail, executives stop engaging with your point and start picking apart the specifics. And when that happens, it forces you into defending your work instead of leading the room. And that's how your ideas stall. You get sent away for more detail without anyone actually telling you what detail you're supposed to get. And eventually, someone else summarizes what you said in a couple sentences, and they get the credit that should have been yours. So what should you do instead? Well, next, I'm going to show you the exact thing that'll make executives take you seriously and see you as someone worth promoting fast. And there's just 5 steps to it. It's the same thing that gets my clients results like this. So step 1. Now, the first step of this system is going to fix how you open every presentation so that from the very first sentence, you have executives engaged and ready to act. Now, the way most professionals start a presentation sounds something like this. Hello, today we're going to take a look at next quarter's customer projections and understand the 3 main drivers of churn in our customer base. And that is almost always pretty unpersuasive because what you've just done is handed the audience information. And you might think, well, that's exactly what executives need, right? Especially if the information is compelling enough. But it isn't the information executives are evaluating, it's their interpretation of that information. And that interpretation is filtered through their own experience, their current objectives, what they already understand about the situation and what they believe to be true. The problem with this is you can't control any of that. And so you can't control how they interpret the information and the details that you share. Think of it like a black box. You put information and detail into one end, and it passes through everything the executives already think and believe and all the influences and pressures that they have. And whatever comes out the other side of the black box is the interpretation of the detail that went in, which may have nothing to do with the point that you were trying to make. And it's this interpretation that they're evaluating and judging, and not the stuff that you put into the box in the first place. And this is exactly why you keep getting sent back for more detail, because when the executives are not satisfied with a presentation or information, they ask for more detail. And most professionals believe that if they could just find the right combination of facts or the right pieces of information, then the right interpretation will come out of the box on the other side. But it just doesn't work like that. If you actually want to create a persuasive presentation that shows the executive you're ready to drive the business forward and get picked for more senior opportunities, then you don't try and put stuff in the box. You bypass it entirely by telling the audience what they should understand from your information instead of letting them interpret it for themselves. So the first step is to stop putting things in the box entirely, which means you get rid of the information-led introduction, because in step 2, I'm going to show you exactly what to replace it with that is far more persuasive, and it will bypass the black box completely and get you the credibility with executives that your ideas deserve. Now, some time ago, I was working with this golf club, and after 6 meetings, trying to explain the problem that I could see coming, the project completely stalled. Every time I walked in, I knew exactly what needed to happen. I had it all in my head, but getting it out in a way that resonated with the executives in the meeting was a different story entirely. They kept derailing into the detail and questioning the assumptions, sending me back for more analysis, and decisions just weren't getting made. I'd been brought in on a referral, and if I couldn't turn this around, it wasn't just my reputation on the line here. So in the next meeting, I stripped everything back to just a few slides. Not that the content was any different this time, it's just because this time I stopped trying to explain and instead focused on trying to persuade. And they loved it. Someone even said, Josh, where had this been the whole time? And I had to bite my tongue because it had been there every single meeting. They just couldn't see past the detail to get to the point. And what I realized was that it isn't detail that senior leaders want, it's clarity. And the way you create that clarity is through storytelling framework. This is the same framework that my client Austin used recently and got these results. Every great story, whether Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Game of Thrones, except for the last season, begins with what's known as the establishing. And this is the first part of the framework. It's where you're introduced to the protagonist and the world that they're in and what's at stake for them. And that's exactly how you need to open your presentation to bypass the black box entirely. So once you've deleted your old introduction, you're going to open a document and use a template like this one. It walks you through every part of the framework with prompts and examples and structure that you need to do this quickly. And you can download it in the description below. So instead of that information-heavy opening I showed you earlier, I'm going to use the first part of this template to establish the situation. So in my golf club example, I wrote down that the membership numbers have been growing steadily, but the composition of our customer base has been changing. Now, once you've completed that first part, you're ready for the next step, which is going to help you avoid the mistake that causes most presentations to fall apart right in the middle, even when they start strong with the opening. Now, the next thing that happens in every great story is what's known as the inciting event, sometimes known as the call to adventure. This is where Frodo is asked to leave the Shire and carry the ring, or where Luke is called to rescue Princess Leia. In a business context, this is where you explain why a change or decision is needed. It's the moment where you show senior leaders not just that something needs to happen, but why it needs to happen now and can't wait 6 months. The urgency is what creates the tension and makes executives want to act. So in the next part of the template, this is where I wrote that our aging members have a limited lifetime value. Our customer base is getting older, and younger players simply aren't joining to replace them, which means that unless we actively go after younger members, we're declining in revenue year on year. Now, once you've sorted out the inciting event, you're ready to move on to step 4. Step 4 is really simple. In every story, this is where the protagonist takes action and gets the happy ending, unless it's Game of Thrones. And in your presentation, this is where you need to write down your solution that will fix the problem that you just raised in the previous step. For the golf club, this is where I wrote down that we needed to launch a targeted campaign to attract younger audience into the club and add the amenities that they like so that it will attract them. Now, this is where you keep it brief, because in step 5, I'm going to show you how to present your solution in a way that builds credibility with executives and positions you for bigger opportunities by helping you avoid the mistakes that even experienced professionals make when they finally get their ideas in front of senior leaders. And this is where we turn everything we've built into a slide deck that gets executives making decisions and positions you as someone worth promoting. And it's where most professionals lose all the credibility that they just built in the first 4 steps. So we're going to take the story structure that we wrote out and we're going to turn it into slide decks. And there's 2 parts to doing this. The first is to go through each section and identify your claims. So let me show you. So in my establishing section, I wrote that the membership numbers are growing. So that's my first claim. I also wrote that the composition of the customer base is changing. And that's a second claim. So you go through the story structure and write it as a series of claims, and those claims each become individual slides. Now, here's where most people get this wrong, because they leave those claims as observations, such as membership is growing, demographics are shifting, and that just becomes information you're feeding into the black box, because you're leaving it up to the audience to still interpret the impact of those numbers. So let me show you what you should do instead to avoid being sent back for more analysis when you've already got everything that you need. You need to write those claims as statements that executives can actually respond to by linking it to what they care about. And I use this template again because it's got a lot of executive-ready benefits and outcomes, so you just pick the relevant ones and fill in the blanks. And you can download it for free in the description if you want. So in my example, instead of membership is growing, I write that down as an interpretable and arguable statement. So I write, current growth is masking a profitability risk that will be difficult to reverse. Now, instead of the customer base is changing, I write, membership lifetime value is declining and the pipeline to replace it doesn't exist. Now, those are claims that create urgency. The second part is matching your data to the claims. I had a huge amount of data: retention rates, churn analysis, lifetime value, quarterly earning, market conditions. And what you do is go through it and pick only what supports each claim. So membership is growing, well, I show the membership numbers over time. Our customer base is changing, well, I show a before and after of the age demographics, and that's it. You'll find that most of the data you collected could be left out because you only need to select what is directly relevant to support the statement you made. And you go through the whole structure that you set up, and what you're left with becomes your presentation. Each claim is a slide title, and the supporting data becomes the body of the slide. And that's how you walk into the room and get decisions made instead of being sent back for more analysis. And it's how executives start seeing you as someone operating at their level. But there is one more thing that separates implementers from future leaders, because in every story, the protagonist doesn't just immediately solve the problem. That would be a pretty boring story. Instead, they face numerous challenges along the way, and corporate is no different. Your solution will have challenges and objections raised by senior executives, which, unless answered properly, will expose you as having an employee mindset and not demonstrate the level of strategic thinking that executives are looking for when they decide who gets to move up. So go and watch this video next to learn how to surface and navigate objections so executives think of you for more senior opportunities.